there, welcome back to Capitol Tide. Statewide look at politics. I'm Tim Boyd. Last week, the U.S. House agreed to start negotiations No Child Left Behind, which led to a lot of changes and negotiations. No Child Left Behind is a 2002 law focused on setting high standards with measurable outcomes to improve education. Accountability for it was tied to funding as well. Opponents believe it has led to a testing first mentality. A North Carolina member of Congress will be on the House negotiating team. Virginia Foxx, a Republican from the 5th District, earlier had the chance to talk with her about her role and what she wants done. Congresswoman, great to have you on the program. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here.
All right, so we have not heard a huge amount of information in North Carolina about No Child Left Behind in some time. There's been efforts to revamp it quite a bit. There's a deal with this conference committee that you were on that negotiated. What can you tell us about what changes are in this deal?
Well, it's a wonderful reauthorization of the ESEA bill, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. That bill was originally passed in 1965, but over the years it has gotten more and more restrictive, given more and more power to the federal government. So there are several major things that we are very happy about on our side of the aisle, and actually we're pleased that the Democrats agreed with us. We are restricting greatly the power of the Secretary and the President in terms of imposing mandates on the states and localities. We've stopped the coercion of the Secretary for the states to adopt Common Core, and that is a big issue in North Carolina. So while the legislature has already voted to do away with Common Core, we're saying it's entirely up to the states now whether they have Common Core or don't have it. We've stopped the high-stakes testing that was mandated by the last reauthorization of ESEA. We're stopping the federal government from imposing a one-size-fits-all accountability structure. We're giving lots of flexibility to the locals and to the states, both in terms of funding and the programs that they're going to operate. So that's, I mean, I've got about 10 points I could make. That's about half of them. We also eliminate about 49 duplicative, unproductive programs.
It does not eliminate testing altogether, though, right? There still will be testing once a year?
There will be testing. But, you know, Lamar Alexander made a startling comment the other day at the conference committee. There are only 17 mandated tests through ESEA. And there was one school district in Florida that had implemented 183 tests, all tied to ESEA. And it was pointed out to them when they complained about the number of tests that there were only 17 mandated by ESEA. The others they had put in at the local level or state level in some way they thought to comply with ESEA. So we want to make it real clear what is required by ESEA and how the states and locals have flexibility in the other things they do and what testing they do.
You mentioned the states have the option on Common Core, but they've always had that option, have they not? Is this more about funding related to Common Core?
Yes, in essence, they did have options, but the president coerced, and Arne Duncan coerced the states into adopting Common Core by promising to give them money, and of course the states never want to say they turned down hard taxpayer dollars given to them by the federal government. They didn't want to be accused of doing that, and so many of them adopted Common Core, and I believe North Carolina was one of those, in order to get those federal taxpayer dollars.
So is this an admission then that No Child Left Behind didn't work?
Well, we don't use that term, No Child Left, because this bill, the ESEA bill, was first passed in 1965. It was reauthorized every 5 to 8 years after that. It was only President Bush that gave it a name, No Child Left Behind. But yes, I think it's an admission it didn't work. The idea was a good idea. Let's make sure that the states are not cherry picking who they test. Let's make sure some children aren't left behind because they aren't tested and they aren't considered in the metrics. But you give some good idea to bureaucrats and they can mess it up every time. And they got this down to such small cells of testing that perfectly wonderful schools would be categorized as failing, and that became unacceptable to everybody, Democrats and Republicans.
So does that mean those accountability things are thrown out? The feds aren't going to intervene in schools or determine what high qualified teachers are, and the accountability factor, is that all out now with this new legislation?
Oh no, the accountability factor is not out. I believe we should have accountability for all federal taxpayer dollars. What we're doing, though, is saying the federal government, the Department of Education, cannot impose one-size-fits-all accountability. The states will develop accountability factors and have them approved by the federal government. But no, we want accountability. In fact, I think we should have accountability in every single program funded by taxpayer dollars, whether it's at the federal, state, or local level. And our committee is doing, I think, a really good job of that. When we passed the Skills Act, my bill on workforce development 2 years ago, we had factors for the first time ever. So you're going to see under Republicans more and more measures of accountability, but they're not going to be, again, one size fits all from the federal level.
But will the ability of the federal government to intervene if those accountability standards aren't upheld, is that still in place?
We want the states to do that. We want to hold the states accountable for that. And so what we're hoping is that we will be able to develop systems with the states where they will do that and the federal government doesn't take over.
This has become sort of, I know this is Democrats signed on to this, but education in general has become a lot of Republicans versus President Obama. But he did talk about reducing testing and whatnot just, I believe, about a month ago. I mean, is there room for discussion with the president on this issue? And do you think inevitably he'll go along with this?
Well, you know, my experience with the president, he says a lot of good things, but it's in the implementation that you have to be careful. And certainly the White House did sign on to this bill sort of kicking and screaming. I don't think it was something they were terribly happy about. And even in the negotiations in the conference committee, they were still trying to do some things at the White House that really neither side wanted. So the White House is not totally happy with this, but as we said at the beginning of the conference, the White House wasn't happy, the Republicans weren't 100% happy, Democrats weren't 100% happy, but that generally means you've got a good bill because one side isn't claiming complete victory. But this is a really good move in the right direction for Republicans, and we feel we got much more of the House bill than the Senate got of their bill.
Well, and it's flown under the radar a lot with all the terror stuff going on in security, so we're really glad you joined us to sort of explain it more in depth. Congresswoman, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Thank you so much for your time.
Happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for giving me this opportunity to explain it. And you're right, the other things have taken precedent, but this is very important.
Thank you. All right, time for one last break. When we return, the